Hi, I'm Andrew from Alpine Home Air Products. Today we're at the home of someone who's going to get a new whole house electronic air cleaner installed, and you'll get to see how that's done through the course of this video. It's not that hard, and they're really great to have for your home. So let's go inside in the basement and start this project. Okay, here we are in the basement getting ready to install the air cleaner on this furnace. Now this is a vertical basement furnace, and you might have a basement vertical furnace or you might not, but don't worry, that's okay. Even if your furnace or air handler is in the attic or in a crawl space, whether it be vertical or horizontal, don't worry, you still can use the same air cleaner, and you'll be able to learn from this installation video and use the exact same techniques that we're using here. So this video will still help you, and you'll still learn from what we're doing today. It's basically the same type of installation. Alright, let me explain to you a little bit more about how the air flows through this furnace, or in your case maybe an air handler. And when you understand about the airflow, it'll help you better understand how the air cleaner works and how we're going to install it. Now the furnace provides heat in the winter time. Now this particular home has an air conditioning system as well, and it provides cooling in the summer. You might have central air conditioning, or you might not. That's okay, it doesn't make a difference. Let me show you the pathway of the air, how the air moves through a furnace or air handler, because then you can better understand how an air cleaner works and where it's installed. Well, the first thing to know is for all the air that is blown out into each room through a vent or register, and those are where you can put your hand and you feel the air blowing. For all the air that's blown into each room, the air has to be sucked back and returned. What do I mean? Let me show you. This is a duct system. Over here on the right side we have a return air duct, and on the left here this is the supply air duct. The way it works is this: when your furnace comes on or your central air conditioning comes on, the fan begins to blow. When it's blowing, air is sucked or pulled from each room throughout the home, and it comes down here through each pipe, gathered into this return air plenum, they call it, which is just a duct or big box. The air moves down that plenum, down here, across, and when it goes across, it moves through what we currently have, which is a one-air disposable filter. It goes through that filter, comes in through the bottom of the furnace where we have the blower, moves up. Now in the winter time, as it gets to this part, it's heated. In the summer, it wouldn't be heated. Keeps moving, moves through the supply plenum, where in the air conditioning season it would be cooled, and then moves through another set of ducts throughout the home back to each room where that warm air or that cool air is distributed. That's the basic cycle of airflow or air movement on a complete system. Now let's take a closer look at this 1-inch filter here, because that's where our new air cleaner is going to be installed. Now we don't need our current 1-inch filter that's in the system, so we're going to remove it. It's just not as good as the air cleaner, and it's not necessary anymore. It's only 1 inch wide. Now our new air cleaner is about 6 inches wide, and it's going to install right in the same area. Let's take a look at that air cleaner, and then we'll start talking about the installation. Okay, here it is, the Honeywell F300E. This is the model we're going to install today. Now I've also brought with 2 other air cleaners. They're both Aprilaire brand. This is the Aprilaire 2400. This is the Aprilaire 5000. So that if you happen to be installing one of these, you'll know how that's done. And we can also have the opportunity to talk about the differences between the technology that separates each of these from each other. Now the Honeywell that we're installing today is an electrostatic air cleaner, and it comes pre-assembled, so we don't have to do any pre-assembly work before we install it. Whereas the Aprilaire models need a little bit of pre-assembly. It's easy to do. We'll go ahead and do that pre-assembly work now, and you can see how that's done, and then we'll talk a little bit about the differences between each model. The Aprilaire 2400 is the same as the Aprilaire 2200. They're just different sizes, and they're non-electric air cleaners. Here's what comes with, and here's how they're installed. This is the outer housing. This is the inner housing. These are the pleat spacers, and this is the filtration media itself. The first thing we do is we put the filtration media inside the inner housing. Open all 4 tabs around the edge of the inner housing by pushing down on the tab and pulling the side of the frame out. Okay, now we grab the filtration media and we place it in here. But the first thing we have to do is open up the side tabs here, simply by pulling up as such. With both sides up, put the filtration media in the center. The top of the filtration media should have a little cardboard edge. That part should be up. Then take the little cardboard edge and slide it into the small tabs on either end. There's 2 tabs on either side of the inner housing. So I slide it in both tabs on this side, and then I do the same on the other side. Once it's in place, I snap the edge of the inner housing back down over the cardboard. You should hear it click firmly in place as you do that. Then we put a pleat spacer in to separate each of the folds in the media filter. Now, 1 fold should go under each finger of the pleat spacer. So we carefully put it in place, and I can see that there's just 1 fold under each finger of the pleat spacer. Once I know that, I can slide it back and forth, and that lines up each of the pleats to get them all in a nice neat row. And I'll put my first of the 6 pleat spacers in, and I just click it in at the notches on either side, and I should hear a click, and I know it's in place. And then I do the same thing for the rest of the pleat spacers. It's all done, pre-assembled. Now I take this inner housing with the media in it, and I put it back inside the outer housing. And put the door back on. And that is now pre-assembled and ready to be installed if we were going to install this model. But we're not. We're going to be installing the Honeywell model. But let's look at how the Aprilaire 5000 is pre-assembled. The Aprilaire 5000 pre-assembly is really the same thing as the pre-assembly for the Aprilaire 2200 or the 2400. Here's the different components. This is the outer housing. Here's the power pack electric door. This is the inner housing. Here's the filtration media. These are the pleat spacer combs. And this is a current sensing relay. Now, again, this is pre-assembles the same way as the April 2200 or the 2400. I'll go ahead and do that now. Here's 3 whole house air cleaners. What's the benefit of a whole house air cleaner? A whole house air cleaner does just what it sounds like. It cleans the air in the entire home. Now that's different from a standalone air cleaner, which maybe you've seen, the type that plug in that you will put on a table. They only clean 1 or 2 rooms, and so they don't give you the benefit throughout your entire home. For your money, you get much better value by having a contractor grade air cleaner such as one of these installed to clean all the air throughout your entire home. What's the benefit of an air cleaner? Well, the EPA, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, says that of the top 5 environmental hazards facing the country today, indoor air quality is one of those. And that's because there's a lot of pollutants in the air inside, which you want to get rid of. Now, especially if you have allergies or asthma or young children or older people in the home, having clean air is essential. Also, if you want to reduce dusting, an air cleaner will reduce that as well. How does an air cleaner get rid of all these little small things in the air, such as dust, dander, pollen, and spores? Well, we have 3 different models here which use 3 different types of technology, or a combination of them. And I'll show you exactly how they do that. The first one I have here is the Aprilaire 2200, which is the same as Aprilaire 2400. It's a non-electronic filter, and it simply has inside it filtration media. And it has about 72 square feet of filtration media, all compacted inside here. And as the air flows into the side of it, it captures those particulates, and the air coming out the other side becomes clean. Now, this can capture particulates down to about 3 microns in size at an efficiency of about 70%. Now, how big is a micron? Well, a human hair, is about 20 to 40 microns thick. Okay, so it's a measure of things really small. Again, this can filter out down to about 3 microns at 70%. So it's a good unit, but not as good as these 2 units here. This is the one we're going to be installing today. This is the Honeywell F300E. This is a completely electronic unit, and it uses electrostatic technology. So as the air enters one side, it goes through a pre-filter, and then it hits the electrostatic plates inside the unit. And the plates polarize the particulates, so there's a negative and positive charge on them. And then as they move along, they're electronically captured and pulled onto the plates. Now, the plates are periodically pulled out and washed to remove those particulates. So the air exiting the other side then is clean air. Now, this one has better cleaning technology. It can clean particulates out of the air that are about 0.35 microns in size at around 81% efficiency. So it's about 10 times better at cleaning small particulates than this one. And then this one here is the Aprilaire 5000. This is the top of the line unit, rated #1 by Consumer Reports for several years running now. And it uses a combination of these 2 types of technologies, which is electrostatic and media combined. Again, the air enters on one side, comes out the other side clean, and it uses that media filtration to pull the particulates out of the air, as well as the electrostatic polarization. It can clean down to 0.01 microns. Now, this is going to capture the smallest of things floating through the air, which would be things such as viruses, even at 70% efficiency. So this one's about 10 times approximately better than this one. Now, our customer today decided that this unit's good for them, for their budget, for their household. Nobody has allergies in the home, and they don't have any special needs, so this is still a great unit. They decided to go with the middle of the road. Any of them would be appropriate, but it depends upon your particular needs. If only the best will do, this is a great unit to go with. So let's take a look at how each of these units are maintained, as well as how they would install in various configurations. Aprilaire 2400 or other non-electronic ones, as well as the Aprilaire 5000. The maintenance of them is simple. About once a year, you pull out the filtration media and simply replace it with a new one. Electronic ones, such as the Honeywell F300, the cells are pulled out every 1 to 6 months and washed. You can wash them with hot water and detergent in a dishwasher or in a tub. Now, if you wash them in your bathtub, be careful, the corners are sharp. You don't want to scratch your tub surface. Make sure they're dry, and then reinsert them into the air cleaner. Now, we want to make sure that your project is safe and that you don't have any problems. So keep a few things in mind, will you please? 1, first turn off the power to the furnace or air handler before you begin. Find the power switch and turn it off. Secondly, when working around high voltage, 120 volts, there is the hazard of injury if you're not very careful. Now, if you don't have experience with this or you're not comfortable with it, don't do it. Have an electrician or a heating and air conditioning contractor do this part of the work for you. Another thing to be considerate of is sheet metal can be sharp, so when you're cutting it or handling it, be aware that you could cut yourself if you're not careful. And finally, always follow the manufacturer's installation instructions and specifications. They're provided with the product. This video does not supersede that, so follow the manufacturer's instructions carefully. If you do these things, your project will turn out safely. It's time to install the air cleaner. Where does it go? Well, it could go in a lot of different places. It depends upon your particular furnace or air handler and how it's installed. Now, ours is vertical in the basement, so our air handler is going to go down here, where the return air enters the furnace. Yours will also go where your return air enters the furnace. Again, return air means where the air comes down and gets sucked back into the unit. Wherever that ductwork connects with the furnace or air handler, in between that ductwork and the furnace or air handler is where the air cleaner goes. It gets sandwiched in there. Ours is going to install down here because our air enters on the lower right-hand side. To do the installation, what materials are needed? Well, you need these materials, all of which are provided in our sheet metal transition installation kit. Here's what's included. Well, you get 4 pieces of flat stock sheet metal screws, a sheet metal driver, and S-drives or S-hooks. And you'll see how all of these are used in just a little bit, but we make it easy for you by putting it all together into an easy installation kit, which you can buy on our site. What tools do you need to install an air cleaner? These are the tools. First, a drill. These are sheet metal pliers. They make sheet metal bends. Now, you don't have to have these if you have one of these. This is a sheet metal bender as well. You put the sheet metal in here and you bend it up and it makes 1-inch bends. We sell these on our website. These are sheet metal shears, and these are sheet metal shears as well. You don't have to have both. If you have these, you don't need these. These ones cut straight lines only, and these ones cut straight lines as well as circles. A hammer, a flathead screwdriver, a marker, tape measure, and an L-square for drawing straight lines, or anything else to make a straight line. Here's where the air cleaner goes. It's going to fit in here between the return air and the furnace. Now, how do we get it in there? Obviously, it doesn't fit. Well, we're going to have to remove the return air. This is referred to as a return air boot or a return air drop. Remove this duct or boot or drop away from the furnace, put the air cleaner in this space, attach the boot to the air cleaner. Now, we can see that the area here on the return air isn't going to accommodate that. So, we have to remove a portion of the return air drop first, which will allow us to detach it from the furnace. To cut out a portion of this return air duct, we draw 2 straight lines all the way around. Starting with the bottom, draw 1 straight line on all 3 sides. We'll eventually get the 4th side. Measure up about 10 to 12 inches from that line and draw another straight line all the way around. Now we drill a hole and then we cut along both lines to remove this section of ductwork. cut along my lines on the inside piece. I drill a hole first at each line and then cut outwards. Alright, now we're all cleared here. We have our space cut out. The next thing we do is remove this bottom duct away from the furnace or air handler and install the air cleaner. Next thing I want to do is open the door on the air cleaner and take out any of the components that are inside it so we can attach the outer housing to the furnace. I'll also take the bottom access door off the furnace so we can access both sides and screw them together. I'm going to screw the air cleaner using the sheet metal screws onto the furnace. You notice that there's of course already a pre-cut hole inside the furnace and there's a rectangle already in the air cleaner. Now the likelihood of those being the exact same size isn't that strong because there's lots of different hole sizes on furnaces or air cleaners and they're not always going to be the same. So what if one is bigger than the other? Well, you can make up the difference with a little bit of flat stock sheet metal, which is provided in the transition kit. And right now, putting mine in place, I can see that they're really close, but that the width hole in the furnace is a little bit wider than I want, by about an inch. So I'm going to be able to make a little sheet metal strip and screw that in place to make up the difference. Otherwise, though, it's pretty close. So what I do is I put the air cleaner in place as close as I can to align it with the existing hole, and then at the holes provided in the air cleaner I go ahead and use my sheet metal screws and screw it in. Okay, the front looks good and I can see it's nice and secure. Let's look at the back. And on this side I see I have a gap. So I'm going to close that gap with a little sheet metal strip which I'll cut out of the sheet metal provided in the sheet metal transition kit. And I see the piece fits, so I'll go ahead and screw it in place. Okay, now that we have the air cleaner in place, I'm going to secure the return air boot the same way by screwing it on to the air cleaner. Now again, I can see that there's a gap on the back side because the two sizes are not exact. And the same way I did the first time, I'll make a sheet metal plate to make up the difference. Okay, now that the return air boot is in place, the next step is to put on our S drives. Now the S drives will go on the bottom edge all the way around. How do we do that? Well, we simply measure the distance of each side, mark it, and cut it, and then it slides right in place. We'll do that all the way around. All the S drives are cut. Now I'm ready to put them in place. But when I cut them, the ends get a bit smushed. So I can use a screwdriver to open them up. I'll show you what I mean. So I put the screwdriver in and I just open up each side of the S, and it's shaped like an S or two V's or an N, whatever you want to call it, so that now it's not all smushed up. I'll do the same thing for the other side. And that looks much better. Now I put each of the drives on all the way around each side. However, you want to make sure you put the drive on correctly, and that's with the V facing out. This is the way I want it here. This shows the V facing out, like that. Now if I flip it the other way and put it on, you can see that the V is facing in. I don't want it like that. Again, I want the V facing out. And I'll do that all the way around. The next step is I take a piece of sheet metal from the transition sheet metal supply kit, and it's going to make one side of the four sides of this transition that we're beginning. Now if I hold it in place where it will begin to become a side on the transition, I can see it's larger than the piece I need, and also there's going to need to be some bends put in it. Now the first step is to take that sheet metal out, and before you do anything to it, put a 1-inch bend all the way along one end. Now that can be done either with your sheet metal pliers, or I prefer to use the sheet metal bender. I bend it at a slight angle, just eyeballing it, about 45 degrees. Then I put the sheet metal piece in place with the 1-inch bend down, sliding into the S drive, like so. Now this piece isn't a side yet because we can see that it's larger than what we actually need. So we have to trim it. Now where do we trim it? Fortunately, it's easy. Using a marker, we make a few marks. One mark in each corner makes an X, and then we'll trim near those X's. Let me show you what I mean. At each corner, make a horizontal and vertical line to create an X where that corner exists. I'll do that on the bottom, on both sides, and on the top as well. And that will help me figure out where I need to draw more lines and trim the piece. Then remove the piece, put it on the floor, and we'll make some more marks. Now we should have 4 X's, one in each corner, which represents the marks we just made. Now I'm also going to put a little arrow here pointing down, and I'll even put the word down with the arrow. And that will help me remember which side is the bottom here as I work with the piece. I also know that the bend that I just made is also the bottom part. Okay, what do I do now? Well, the next step is pretty simple. You simply draw a straight line between each of the X's to create a box. So I'll start with the top edge and put it at each X and draw a straight line. And do the same thing on both sides and work my way all the way around. So the next step is to make our trim lines, and how we do that is pretty simple. We measure 1 inch out from the line you have on both the left and right side, and then draw a second line. So simply measure 1 inch out on the side and draw a straight line. On the other side, measure 1 inch out from the existing line, draw a straight line. Now on the top, I measure up not 1 inch, but a ½ inch, and do the same thing. And then draw a straight line. Then we trim along the outside line, not the inside line, along the outside line all the way around using our sheet metal shears. Almost done with the cutting. Now we just need to notch out each corner. And I've already drawn the boxes because of the lines I've drawn where they intersect to create the area that needs to be notched out. So I notch out each of the 4 corners, and it's pretty simple. Now we bend up each side using our bender or our sheet metal pliers, and simply slide the bender on if you have one, or use your sheet metal pliers on the 1 inch side, and there's 2 of the sides that need to be bent there, and then just bend it straight up. And then we bend the other side the same way. And lastly, we bend the top the same degree as the bottom, but the opposite direction. So we see the bottom is bent down about 45 degrees. So we bend the top along that mark the other direction about 45 degrees. And the piece is all done and ready to be put in place. But before we can put our piece in place, we need to do one thing first, and that's notch 2 of the corners. What do I mean? Well, on this upper plenum, we have to make a little V in 2 opposing corners, about 3/4 of an inch high. So it can be these 2 corners, or these 2 corners. I'm going to choose these 2 corners. Then put the piece in place. Simply sliding the bottom 1-inch bend into the S drive. Like so. Now, I'm going to make a slight trim on the top where the 1-inch bend overhangs the horizontal line on the upper return air plenum. Let me show you what I mean. It's really quite simple. So right here, I want to continue this line with my marker and just cut this part out. See? So with it in place, I'll make a notch. And that's the way I want it, right like that. Then to secure this piece in place, we need to put one more S drive on the top. So I measure the top length, just like I did the bottom, and cut an S drive. Now we put the S drive, which we just cut on, by sliding it in place. And that's the interesting thing about this type of sheet metal. It will hold this piece in place just by the design. Now if you look at the edge of the S, it's opposite from the other end. So we want to make sure that we put the end on that will slide on. If you're trying to slide it on and it won't work, try flipping it around the other way and sliding it on. And once it starts to get tight, I'll use a hammer to put it on. Now I'll secure the piece in place by using the screw gun and putting a few screws right through the S drive. Great, that side's done and secured. Now we just repeat the same process all the way around for the other three sides. Okay, I've done three sides. This is our fourth side. And I want to show you a little tip for the last two sides, which you can do on the third and fourth side. And that is to measure the line, you can use the existing sheet metal to draw the straight line from. So you don't have to do it the way you did the first two pieces when there was no other sheet metal in place. Simply put the rough cut piece of sheet metal in place and then use your marker and drag it along the other piece, which is right there. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Now that the piece is in place, I can just go ahead and tighten it up by putting some screws in the overhanging 1-inch flaps, as well as perhaps some in the S drives, and it makes the whole structure rigid. It looks secure. Now, if there's some air holes in the corner, we can simply use some caulk or silicone sealant to plug those up. That's a good looking transition. It's all done. Now on the Honeywell F300E, inside here there's a small little plastic piece and it has an arrow on it, and the arrow should be pointing in the direction of the airflow. Now which way is the direction of the airflow on this insulation? Well, the air comes down here and across and then into the bottom of the furnace, right? That means the arrow should be pointing the direction of the airflow, so it would be to the left here. So looking at the piece inside here, I see it's pointing the opposite direction. I need to unscrew it, rotate it into the proper direction, re-screw it. What that little piece does is simply it allows these cells, when I put them back in, the panels to align in the appropriate direction. So I'll go ahead and do that. furnace door back in place. And now I'm ready to put the cells back inside the air cleaner. Now on the Honeywell F300E, there's arrows indicating direction of airflow, so I want to make sure the arrow points with the airflow. And also there's a plastic piece here at the top. Make sure that goes up, not down. So I put the two center cells in. Which leaves me with just these pieces left. One's a pre-filter and one's a post-filter. This is pre-filter, so it goes upstream of the airflow on this side. And this is the post-filter, so it goes downstream. And then I put the door back on. Since we still have the old 1-inch filter slot hole, I don't want it to suck air in through there. So I made a little sheet metal cover to cover that up. Okay, all we need to do now is plug the unit in. It's that simple. The model F300E has a pressure switch in it which senses airflow, and so it knows when air is moving through the duct system, and we simply have to plug it in and it will come on and off automatically. However, if you buy an Alpine brand furnace, you don't have to use the current sensing relay, as the Alpine brand furnace already has terminals on the control board to hook up your air cleaner to. See the installation instructions for that, as it's different for each model. The current sensing relay will allow the unit to come on and off as the furnace comes on and off. Let's go ahead and plug it in and turn the unit on. Well, that's it. We're all done. We've completed the installation of our electronic air cleaner. Now hopefully your installation went just as well as ours. You're now the proud owner of an air cleaning system that I think that you'll really enjoy for you and your family. Well, thanks for shopping at Alpine Home Air Products.